The internet is losing its mind right now, and this time it's over Qwen 3.5, specifically their small model series. Alibaba just released native multimodal versions of Qwen 3.5, which are as small as 2 billion and even 0.8 billion parameters. They outperform some models 4 times their size in reasoning and vision, and they are so tiny that we can now run them locally on 6-year-old laptops and smartphones with no internet connection. In this video, we're gonna take a look specifically at Qwen 3.5's new small series models like the 0.8 billion and 2 billion. We're also going to test them out on an M2 MacBook Pro as well as on an iPhone 14 Pro and find out how powerful they actually are. It's going to be a lot of fun, so let's dive into it. So why is everyone obsessed with these new Qwen 3.5 models? After all, we've had small models for a while now. I even covered IBM's Granite 4.0 Nano models in a previous video, and their model was just 300 million parameters in size. So what makes these small Qwen models so different? Well, it's all about something called intelligence density. You see, for a long time the rule was if you want a model that can see, reason, and code, it has to be huge. But these new Qwen 3.5 small models prove that that doesn't need to be the case. They somehow managed to compress their big models into tinier versions that still support unified multimodal architecture. That means their 0.8 billion model doesn't just answer text, it also has vision and coding abilities baked into it. Let's look at their benchmarks real quick because they are quite interesting. On the MMLU benchmark, which measures general knowledge and reasoning, the 2 billion model achieves a score of 66.5, while the 0.8 billion model reaches 42.3, which might not sound too impressive, but keep in mind that for context, the original Llama 2 with 7 billion parameters, which came out back in 2023, scored 45.3 on the same benchmark. This just goes to show how much we've managed to shrink the parameter size and still maintain a decent comprehension score. But check this out, their real standout is their multimodal performance. In specialized vision tests like OCR Bench, the 2 billion model scores 85.4 and the 0.8 billion hits 79.1, indicating that they are highly capable of tasks like reading complex documents and analyzing images with text. Oh, and they both support a massive 262K context window, so you can feed them entire PDFs or use them to analyze large code bases. That is kind of impressive. But now let's look at how they actually perform. Since both the 0.8 billion and 2 billion models can run locally on almost any modern laptop, I'm going to conduct these tests in full airplane mode with no internet connection whatsoever on my local laptop. For the first test, we'll spin up a local server on LM Studio and hook it up to Qwen in VS Code to see if these tiny models can actually handle a real-world coding task. So first you have to go to the Models tab and download the GGUF versions of the 0.8 billion and the 2 billion parameter models. And since we'll be using these models for coding tasks, we will also need to increase the available context length quite a bit. And once we've done that, we can go ahead and start the server, and now let's jump into Qwen. And first of all, as I mentioned, I will turn off my Wi-Fi so we can conduct these tests completely offline. And then in Qwen, at the API configuration section, I will make sure to point our custom LM Studio server URL, and let's also make sure that we choose the 0.8 billion model. And for the prompt, I will ask the model to build a simple company website for a small cafe. And I also noticed that if we don't specify any particular framework and we let Qwen choose on its own, it will choose to install React, which will not work for our demo in offline mode. So I modified the prompt a bit to specifically ask to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript without any external libraries. So let's run the test. So it took the model roughly 1 minute to finish this task, and here's our final result. As you can see, the site is very bland, the design is not very aesthetically pleasing, and the text is very dark. And I also noticed that in the CSS, the model tried to hard code specific images from Unsplash that would fit our theme, so that's an interesting observation. And if we turn on Wi-Fi back for a moment, we can see that one of those images actually loads up, and it appears to be an image of a doctor holding a phone, so that's pretty random. but the other images contain invalid URLs. And I also tried to prompt the model again to fix the broken text and also improve other areas, but it could not reliably do so. So overall, I would say that although this model is capable of coding and tool calling, I don't think it's actually a good idea to use this in real-world scenarios because the parameter count is just too low. But now let's test out the 2 billion parameter model with the same prompt and see how well it does. And this model actually gave me a lot of headaches because very often it would get stuck into a loop, writing the same section again and again, so I had to stop the task and restart it again. I'm not sure if this is a problem with the model itself or the way LM Studio conducts the server or the way Qwen processes the prompt, but with this specific configuration, this was an ongoing struggle for me. And another thing I noticed is that while the 0.8 billion parameter model went straight into coding, the 2 billion parameter version preferred structuring a plan first and then proceeding with the actual coding. So the 2 billion parameter model finished this task in roughly 3 minutes, so considerably longer, and let's see what the final result is. So as we can see, it's already a step up because the design looks a lot cleaner and it uses a brownish theme, which is closer to what a coffee shop visual identity would be. And another thing I noticed is that if we turn on Wi-Fi, it actually loads up some external icons, which makes the whole site look even better. And this version actually tried to implement the cart functionality that I initially asked for, because we now get this nice cart sidebar, although I don't see an add to cart button on the item cards. And when I tried to prompt to fix these issues, once again, I got into the same technical issue where the model went into an infinite loop. So I figured this just might be an issue with LM Studio in conjunction with Qwen or something of that sort. But let's be honest, obviously no one would seriously consider using such small models for complex and serious coding. I just conducted these tests out of curiosity to see if such a small parameter count can still produce a meaningful result for a given coding task. So now let's do something more exciting. Let's try to run these models on an iPhone 14 Pro. And to do this, I built a native iOS app using Swift and the MLX Swift framework. And MLX is Apple's open source library that allows you to run models directly on the Apple Silicon Unified Memory Architecture. By leveraging the Metal GPU, we can get these Qwen models running with hardware acceleration right on the device. I will also put a link in the description to the repo for this Swift project so you can download it and compile it on your own device. So as soon as we open the app, it will immediately start downloading the 0.8 billion model. And once that is done, we are now ready to use it. But before prompting anything, let me switch on the airplane mode on my iPhone. So now let's start with a simple hello. For some reason, it replies that its name is Alex. Okay, that's very random, but okay. But did you notice how fast the response was streamed? I'm honestly blown away at the speed on how quickly this model answers you in real time. Now let's try the famous car wash test, which most models usually get wrong. And would you look at that? Qwen 3.5 actually answers correctly, so that is already impressive. Now the coolest thing about these models is that they can also use vision capabilities. So now I'm going to show it an image of a banana and let's see if it understands what it is and in what condition it is. So it does correctly identify that it is indeed a banana, although it says it's a dog banana. I've honestly never heard of this term. A dog banana? What is that? What is Qwen talking about here? All right, but anyway, it thinks that it is overripe and it cautions me that it might not be safe to eat, which is not true. I had that banana this morning and it was delicious. But anyway, once again, I'm just blown away by how fast it's processing my prompt and giving me back the response. Now let's try another picture. Let's see if it can identify the breed of the dog in this picture. So here we can see that it is not quite accurate because it thinks that it sees two dogs, which is not true. And it does not mention the breed, so let's ask it specifically what kind of dog it is. So it thinks it's a golden retriever, which is obviously very far from the truth. So although some of the responses are not entirely accurate, and some of them are just really funny, I'm still genuinely impressed by the fact that such a small model can reason about contents of an image and do it in such a quick manner. And last thing I want to test is this model's OCR abilities, as it was touted in the benchmarks. Specifically, I want to see if this model can identify what is the language of the text content presented in this image. To give you some context, the language displayed in this image is Latvian, which is actually my native language because I am originally from Latvia. And unfortunately, Qwen fails this test because this is not Slovenian, nor is our language even similar to Slovenian. And I also find it funny how confidently it translates a word to the same word, which I'm not even sure is a real word. So clearly there are some heavy hallucinations going on in this prompt response. All right, let's now move to the 2 billion parameter model. When you switch the dropdown, it will first gonna download it. And once that is done, we can now run the same tests on this version to see if we get some meaningful improvements. So let's start with the simple hello again. Okay, and at least this time it's not Alex responding, so that is already an improvement. Now let's do the car wash test again, and once again the model passes the car wash test, so well done there. Now let's proceed with the banana image, and this time we get a more meaningful answer. It does detect that it is indeed a banana, and as for the condition, it says that it's fully ripe and ready to eat, which is true. Now let's try the dog picture again, and this one says it's a Pomeranian. I mean, I don't think these breeds are even relatively similar, so unfortunately even the 2 billion model is bad at identifying dog breeds. And lastly, let's try the picture with the text again and see if it can identify the language. And look at that, the 2 billion parameter model did correctly identify that this text is indeed Latvian. That is pretty cool. So there you have it. Those are the Qwen 3.5 small model series. I honestly think that despite the little inconsistencies, these are indeed the most powerful tiny models I've ever used. The fact that we can now have an open source native multimodal LLM running on an iPhone 14 Pro offline and producing meaningful results with a relatively fast inference speed is super impressive. So Qwen really has outdone themselves this time. Well done. But there is a bit of a somber update to share. As I was finishing this video, reports surfaced that Alibaba is undergoing a major restructuring of the Qwen team. Key leadership figures and top engineers behind these models have reportedly departed, some to pursue their own AI startups. This has left the community wondering if the Qwen era of rapid breakthroughs might be slowing down. It makes these current models even more significant, as they might actually be the last major release from this specific team for a while. But what do you think about these small series models? Have you tried them? Will you use them? Let us know in the comments down below. And folks, if you like these types of technical breakdowns, please let me know by smashing that like button underneath the video, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel. This has been Andres from BetterStack, and I will see you in the next videos.